Well, we have a bombshell new report to get to. According to Representative Jim Jordan, hundreds of secret documents show that the Departments of Homeland Security, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, the State Department, Stanford University, and others were working all in tandem to censor American speech before the 2020 election. This includes true information, jokes, and also opinions. All this according to documents that were released by the House Judiciary Committee on the weaponization of the federal government.
Jordan writes that the federal government, disinformation experts at colleges, big tech, and others worked together through the Election Integrity Partnership to monitor and censor American speech. And according to one EIP member, the EIP was created at the request of CISA, and that Alex Stamos, director of the Stanford Internet Observatory and allegedly part of EIP, said they were working on some election monitoring ideas with CISA.
Well, how did this all go down? EIP stakeholders would allegedly submit misinformation reports and then would analyze the reports and find similar content across the platforms and then submit reports to the big tech companies, often with a recommendation on how specifically to censor that information. Again, this is all according to reporting from the House Judiciary Committee. Now, in a statement to Fox News Digital, CISA Executive Director Brandon Wales said the agency does not and has never censored speech or facilitated censorship. So obviously we already know a lot of the pieces here, but what this is showing specifically is that CISA, which is a government agency, remember there was an attempt to gotcha Matt Taibbi about saying the CIS instead of CISA in one place. CISA is a government agency. They were working with the Election Integrity Project at Stanford, where they would flag misinformation, flag things they thought were misinformation, and then the Stanford researchers would look for more examples of that, and then would submit to the social media companies and say, you should take this down. But this was specifically requests coming from the government agency. The government agency would have what action they wanted in mind when they gave it to the Election Integrity Project. So again, this shows that government forces and some nonprofits and others were very much entangled in an effort to take down some of the, I'm sure some of the content they flagged. There's examples of content they flagged that was genuinely wrong, and there are some laws around, we got into this a little bit with Schellenberger yesterday, laws around what you're allowed to say about the, trying to, about the election and suppressing the vote. But some of these are clearly jokes. There was one piece of content was a Mike Huckabee, either a tweet or a statement on Facebook or something, where he just says, I just voted and I got home and all my dead relatives I'm now voting for them too. We're all voting for Trump. Like, it's obviously not serious. And that got flagged as something that should be taken action of by a government agency. That's this complaint laundered through a nonprofit to social media.
Is there any evidence that any of the social media companies acted on what seemed to be clear jokes and the like, as opposed to just acting on the unpermissible speech, the election fraud type things and the like? Oh yes,
yes, we have examples, and they were in some of the Twitter files of them moderating posts of that nature, or like, hey Democrats, or hey Republicans, whoever it was, remember to vote on Wednesday, that kind of thing, and those getting deleted. And also, we have plenty of evidence that, again, that sometimes the social media companies were having internal deliberations where they did not want to comply, and they thought these were not fair assertions. They was mischaracterizing things as misinformation. We alluded to this a little bit yesterday, but this new Twitter Files installment from Susan Schmidt, where it's the same thing as the previous Russian bots list. Another example of I can't remember which exact, I think this was DHS. It was DHS coming to Twitter and saying these are Russian bots, and Twitter saying, the exact quote was great, where Yoel Roth talking to other people at Twitter saying, there's nothing to see here. Inactive accounts may be spam, but nothing insidious. I would suspend some of these, but I actually don't want to throw fire on their report by making anyone think they're correct. So there was internal pushback, but they were just facing this massive, and then in that case, Senator Mark Warner got in their face about how they weren't taking misinformation seriously enough. So, it shows why the Supreme Court case will matter, having to do with Missouri v. Biden, how much contact between the social media companies and the government is appropriate because there was this vast concerted effort to launder the government's complaints about social media through nonprofits to the moderators.
What should the rule be? Is the argument that government agencies should never flag anything at all?
Yeah, that's what we're going to have to decide, and ideally that would be something, I guess, like the Congress would weigh in on this question rather than have the Supreme Court kind of frankly invent it out of thin air. I think it's appropriate for law enforcement agencies to have contact with social media for content, for sexually exploitative content, child pornography, terrorism, maybe organized crime.
What's terrorism? Because right now we have Congress saying that various pro-Palestinian student groups are supporting terrorism, that they aren't allowed to fundraise for Palestine because that's supporting terrorism, that supporting BDS is terrorism.
Yeah, that's the danger. Obviously, I don't think those things, that's not what I'm talking about, and they should have no contact with the platforms on those issues. And frankly, I'd rather go too far the other way and just say they can't even talk to the platforms about terrorism.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree, but I suspect, given the appetite that we're seeing in Congress for characterizing things as terrorism, we did a segment earlier today wherein Tulsi Gabbard, who has historically been framed as an anti-war advocate, seems to be very much invested in getting involved in the Middle East because she thinks it's important to root out terrorism and the like. I mean, given how much incentive there is to use terrorism as a fig leaf to encroach on people's civil liberties, as we saw in the wake of 9/11,
For sure.
and as we're seeing here, I think that most Congress members aren't going to be willing to say, well, we're going to let terrorism go unchecked.
No, I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing at all. We can just call it organized violence or something of that nature. But
yeah, there's going to be some, and I don't know that I have a lot of confidence in the Supreme Court either, but assessing what really is an imminent threat, or threat at all, frankly, is going to be a tall order in these times.
I mean, Congress has already obligated. I mean, this is what's so funny about this. They have forced. There are laws requiring social media companies to report, at least on the sexual exploitation part, to report this information to law enforcement to do something about it. They have to take it down. So they obviously have to have some contact with government because they're ordered by law to take down some of this content. It's not totally unrestricted. It's not that they can absolutely do whatever they want in all circumstances. And I think, most people probably think it's okay for if there was actually an ISIS terror plot being discussed in a Facebook group or something, for Facebook to flag that for DHS and take it down. Probably we'd be okay with that. But I absolutely see your point that, the way the political figures talk and the way that the bureaucratic state has framed terrorism as just being, extremist speech, or what they're describing as extremist speech from left pro-Palestinian sympathetic people in this moment, for sure. What they've described as, right extremist speech in a pro-Trump or January 6th kind of sense. Really, the word terrorism has provided a lot of cover, obviously, for political actors to violate our civil liberties. No disagreement with you there.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll keep following developments on this story. Stick with us. We're rising right after this.